Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to make a book from a box. It's a really simple DIY book binding project. So this is the one that we're going to make today in this video. Lots of different papers. Really fun project to make. So let's get started. These are the supplies that you're going to need. You're going to need a box. This is the one I'm using. It's quite small. You're going to use some papers. I've pre-cut my papers to the size of the box. I'll show you how to size those later. And a nice cover sheet to cover your box. And this is just out of a book. And I love the feeling of the paper. It's nice and matte. You're going to need a awl, some bookbinding thread, or any kind of thread. I use wax linen thread. Some white glue or glue stick. Some scissors. Craft knife. A cutting mat is always really handy to have. So the first thing we're going to do is to disassemble our box. I'm just using some scissors to cut away at a sticker at the bottom and just opening up the box. Most boxes will just be sealed on one side, so find that side and gently just peel away. Try not to rip it too much on the inside, but we're going to be cutting all of this away anyway to make our book. There's a couple other supplies that I forgot to mention, like a ruler and a needle, but I'll get to those in a minute. So we're going to cut away the edges of the box. It's too bad I ripped that there a little bit, but we're going to cover it anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to use a ruler and my knife and cut down the seams that are already on the box. This will make a nice clean line. Always use a really sharp blade. Try to change your blades more often than you think, and you will be surprised at how sharp and crisp your lines are with a sharp blade. So just going around all the edges. And the final one. And then you're going to really see the shape of my book. My book will only hold one signature, although you'll see later on that I realized I could put two in there. So there we go. That's my book cover, front and back, and a spine. It's a book in the making right there. So exciting. Books make me so happy. So I'm just going to trim away these little flyaway pieces so we're not going to see them underneath our paper when we cover. And there we go. So I'm guessing that a lot of people might be using a cereal box or a bigger box, and I just wanted to demonstrate what that would look like. In our Crafternoon coming up, I will complete the book that I'm talking about here out of the cereal box, so you can see what I can make out of it. And then if you wanted to take any of those ideas for yours, then go ahead. But really it's the same concept. This box is just a heck of a lot bigger. We're going to take off all the sides again using the ruler and the craft knife. And this is a good piece. Keep it. That could be used for another mini book. And we'll just work our way around the box. The advantage of having a bigger box like this is that you could create a whole bunch of little books out of it. Or if you had a cereal, not a cereal box, this is a cereal box, but if you had a cracker box, for example, they would be a good one to make a book out of. Any box, really, depending on the size of your book that you want to create. So as I said, mine's going to be a one signature book. This one you'll see in a minute is going to be a very thick book. So these would be great for like memory journals or kind of like junk journals as people call them. So this is a huge book. But when I'm looking at something like this, I always want to make sure that it makes sense when I'm using usually 8.5 by 11 or 12 by 12 paper. So I'm just measuring the size of this, and this is well over 7 inches, so it's about 7.5 inches. So I'd have to fold my paper in half. So that means I would have to have a piece of paper that's about 15 inches that I could fold, and I don't have very many pages that wide. So I'm deciding I'm going to cut it so I can have I can use regular paper, like 8.5 by 11 paper. And I'm cutting it at the 5.5 mark because the cereal box is actually 11 inches tall. And if I cut it at 5.5 right in the middle, I'm going to have 2 books that I can play with. And they're going to be the exact same size or not. As you'll see in a minute, I'm going to cut one even up even more. But boxes make a great base for books, and it shouldn't be overlooked. It looks maybe a little bit tacky, but once they're done, they're just as good as any other book. And you can see a lot of other YouTubers using cereal boxes or a variety of other boxes for their book bases. They're just a great idea, and it would go into the recycling anyway, so it's a great reuse of materials. So here we go. This is going to be one thick book. But looking at these again, it looks like it would still be really wide. Like I would still need a page that I could fold in half. So that would be a 15-inch piece of paper folded in half to make 7.5. So I'm looking at it again. I'm going to trim it down even more. So I go to the 5-inch mark, because then 5 times 2 is 10. And then so I just need a piece of paper that's 10 inches wide, so I could fold that in half. And an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper in North America is the standard size for paper, and this is where a lot of my paper comes from for making books. You could also use scrapbooking paper that's 12 by 12 and have a little bit of leftover as well if you cut that down to 10. Keep everything, because that would make another nice little book, and I can show you that in another video. So I'm just trimming both sides to 5 inches. I'm just simply doing 3 marks with a pencil and drawing the straightest line possible. Once you're done with your book, it's going to be so covered up with nice papers and maybe fabric if you decide to cover it in fabric, that you'll never see a line that's not perfectly straight. So there we go. That's a lot nicer of a size of a book. Here you can see that's going to be a lot more signatures than one signature. And the signature is the bundles of pages in your book. So probably you could fit at least 5 or 6 into a cereal box. That's pretty exciting. That's going to be one nice memory journal. So here we go with my skinny little one signature book. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue the cover sheet on. I'm just using an old magazine. Magazines are everywhere for free, it seems, in the front of stores, for example. I picked this one up at a local home hardware store, but they're really handy to use and keep your table clean. So I'm literally just gluing with my white glue and brush. And make sure you just get to the edges of the page to ensure your cover page will stick down really nicely. Again, I'm just using white glue. You could use a glue stick, whatever works for you. So there's my page completely glued. Now we're going to bring in the cover page. So again, this is the cover page that I picked from a book actually, and I'm just trying to decide. Both sides are really nice, but I wanted the cups and saucers, and I'm just trying to figure out how to avoid that tea party writing. And so I just flip it over I changed my magazine so there's no glue on it. So I put my cover sheet down and I'm kind of eyeballing where I want my cover. I'm not pressing down too hard because I might want to move it around. So yeah, I move it around a little bit to get away from the wording. And then I realized I didn't leave enough at the bottom and I have to scooch it back up. So I'm pretty happy with that. I want to keep everything as level as possible when I put it on my page, just because of the image that I have. Depending on the image that you have, you could just throw it on there if you wanted to, if it didn't really matter to the image that you have. Again, I flip the page just to make sure there's no glue, A bone folder is something else that is really handy. If you don't have a bone folder, you could even use a popsicle stick, or you could just use your fingers if you don't have anything like a bone folder. So I'm just really pushing down. I'm being quite gentle. The glue is pretty wet still, and I'm just trying to get off all the extra glue and air bubbles that are underneath the cover sheet. And it gets gluey. I have a wet cloth, that's why I'm kind of going off screen a little bit here. Always have a wet cloth handy. This really takes away the glue on your page, on your bone folder, on your fingers, keeping your project nice and clean. So this is looking pretty good. The spine is always going to be the trickiest part. Get it as flat as possible. And once you're done your book, don't be discouraged that it looks a little bit wrinkly because of the glue. It should dry flat, and you should be very happy with what you've created. So I am just going to continue to push down just to make sure on this side it's attached really well. And I'm just going to set that aside to dry a little bit while I play around with my inside pages. So put the magazine aside, I don't need that for right now. I'm just going to take my pages that I pre-cut and I'm just going to fold them. Here again, you can use your bone folder to make a really nice crisp crease in your page folds. Here I take a couple pages together. If the pages are thin like these are, it doesn't hurt to fold more than one. Again, use your bone folder. I just thought these are really fun, bright pages to use in this teacup, kind of tea party notebook. The cover is so muted and pastel. I thought having the bright inside pages would be really fun. Now, use whatever you want for your inside pages. If you just have regular 3-hole binder paper you wanted to use, or plain white printer paper, scrap paper, your kids' art, you can make a whole book out of your kids' art, and that's always a fun memento too. But you can really use anything. Get creative. You don't want to use white pages at all. You could use your scrapbooking pages, make every page colorful and creative. It's completely up to you. It's your book. There is no wrong here. And I picked a nice shiny, slightly heavier weight paper that I'm going to be using as my first interior page. Kind of like an interior little cover. I'm just deciding where I want my pages. I guess this is going to be my first page. This is actually a bit too long. I'm going to have to cut that a little bit, but I really like the bright blue on the other side. So yeah, I'm just deciding how to arrange my paper. Again, there's no right or wrong here. Just really have fun with it. If you have a bunch of pages that are really colorful or don't even match, stick them together. Have a lot of fun with it. I'm being too patterny here, and that's not always a great thing, but I guess that's just the mood I'm in. So I am doing kind of a colored sheet, white sheet, gray sheet, and I'm alternating that through the book. I like the idea of lined paper in books only because it gives a bit more journaling. These pages are great for writing on too, but it's nice to have straight lines if you're writing a little bit more of a journal page or a journal entry. The other pages are great for sticking down mementos, pictures, drawing, whatever you use this book for. So it's coming together pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. And finally the blue, and my inside blue matches my outside blue, and that was kind of my plan all along. So again, I need to just trim this front little decorative page, and I'm really just going to eyeball it. I'm going to do that a bit later. I'm just going to set this book aside with a little clip so that nothing moves out of the way, and we're just going to move on and come back to our book cover. So it's a bit drier now. You can still see the shininess of the glue. What we're going to do is we're going to complete the cover by turning in the edges of the book. And my sides are a little bit too long, so if yours are a little bit too long as well, I would trim them, and I would trim them down enough that you could fold them comfortably, My bottom is really too short, but you'll see that I struggle a little bit folding it. But really, what we're going to do next is we're going to cut the corners. And I'm trying to hold this up so you can see. You don't want to touch the corner of your book, but you want to come close to it. Just don't touch it because it will leave a little bit of a gap. You won't be able to cover that corner if you cut right across and touch the corner. So you leave a little bit of an edge. You can see it there. And next, I'm going to grab my magazine. Almost forgot that step. So grab a magazine, open it up to a clean page. And again, I'm just using my white glue and my brush, and I'm gluing the sides. I do one at a time, and we're just literally going to fold it and crease it down. You can use your bone folder here as well. I'm just getting the glue off my hand. It's pretty gluey there. And to make it really nice and crisp, use the bone folder to squeeze out that glue. Don't worry too much about the inside. We are going to cover that, but it's always nice to get glue off of your book when you see it there before it dries. So I flip it and I go around to the opposite sides. It's just kind of the technique I do. I do one side, then the opposite side, and then go to the other two sides. But you can make your way around the book if you wanted to. So doing a cover like this really creates a nice corner edge of your book. And when we put the end pages in, and we'll glue them onto the book cover on the inside, you'll see that it creates a really nice, more professionally done book, rather than just trimming the paper and not having these folded over. So this is the top of the book now. Again, same technique, just putting some glue down and folding it over. The great thing about using a magazine is sometimes you see pictures that you might want to cut out and use in some of your creative bookbinding or paper arts or collage. Like those chairs at the top of the page, like just really inviting, and I should have cut them out, but I didn't. Lastly is the edge at the bottom, and this is a little bit tight, but I really wanted the book to be positioned this way on the cover, so I'm just going to have to deal with it. It's just a little bit trickier to fold, but still possible. So here you can see that my corner doesn't quite match because I didn't do a very good cut job on that first corner, but that's okay because that gives me a great reason to show you how to fix that. It's a very common mistake when people are starting out bookbinding. So in a way, I'm glad I did it. Usually the corners will overlap each other slightly as they do in all the rest of my corners. But just that one, I see a little bit of white cover in between the two cover pieces. And after we do this bone folder, I will show you how to fix that. So if you remember, we trimmed the corners, and it's always good to keep your corners for this exact reason. So this is one of the corners I cut off. We're just gonna glue that corner right there, and you will never know it's there. You might know it's there, but no one else will know it's there. Just a little bit of glue, hiding our little mistake, and gone forever. Perfect. So make sure your book is nice and glued down. If you have time, let it dry. You could have it dry under some books, heavy books if you wanted. Looking back to the front, I flipped it over and I'm still struggling with my spine a little bit. But I'm not too worried. I know that it's going to glue back down. Folding the spine up helps with the crease. And if you gently bring each side in, you'll start seeing the book again. I'm starting to get some air bubbles, unfortunately, but I get most of them out, and we're going to cover any imperfections, so don't worry. So I'm trying to decide what to use for my end covers here. So we really just want a piece of paper that's going to be symmetric around the edges of the book. there's a little piece of paper here that bothered me. So if you have any that are bothering you, just take your scissors and trim it off. Flatten everything down again. That glue will dry and those little bumps will go away, don't worry. I just love the paper pattern of this cover that I found. Okay, so I'm not liking this piece of paper. I actually ended up not using it, and you can see why. It's not long enough. So I go to my stash and I'm finding some more paper, and these doilies seem like they would be very nice because they suit this theme of a tea party. I'm just taking my pencil and marking roughly where I want to cut it. And I'm going to be using my paper cutter, which you've heard me talk about before. I really like this paper cutter. I've had it for literally, probably 15, 16, 17 years. Crazy to think. I changed the blade, but other than that, it works completely fine. So that's looking really good. And I'm putting the doily on the front cover. And now I'm just looking for a piece for the back. And really go crazy here. Just start getting some scrap paper. You could, if you don't have a piece of paper that's big enough, combine a bunch of papers together and stick them on there and make some sort of pattern. So this is the page I'm going to use for the back, and I'm just doing a cheat way, and I'm just going to take the same measurements from the first end page, and I'm just going to cut those again using my Fiskars cutter. The one advantage of this cutter is that it does cut 12 by 12, and if you're going to invest in a paper cutter, always make sure that it cuts a 12 by 12 piece of paper, or bigger, but 12 by 12 is pretty common for paper artists. So here we go. I think that's going to look nice. So we're going to glue those down. Again, here's my glue book, and that page doesn't have any glue on it. So using my white glue again, just going crazy and gluing. So we'll speed this up a little bit, and once you're done gluing, again, make sure you get to the edges. I flip the page to make sure I have a clean page, and I really want to line up my page with my cover, and I want to make it about the same or as close as possible all the way around. And I don't want to cover my spine edge. You're going to see in a minute what I'm going to do with my spine edge. So top and bottom I want pretty much the same, and that's looking really nice. Flatten it out with your bone folder, and that's looking great. It's always good to keep creasing your book so your book knows that it's a book. And in the end, it will fold and it will be beautiful. So again, I'm just gluing the back page, and we'll speed this up a little bit. Literally just gluing, going out to all the edges. And here we go. Now we're going to flip our page to a clean page and glue the back page on. I think I actually flipped it around from what I actually wanted, but that doesn't matter. It's the same on both sides as far as the size of this piece of paper goes. So I'm just pushing it down. It's looking great. The blue in the doily almost matches the bluey green on the circle on the right hand side there. So there, that is looking great. I love the softness of the colors. And then with my bold pages on the inside, it's going to look great. So again, keep using your bone folder or your hands just to flatten down all the areas of your book to make sure it's nice and secure and no air gaps or big clumps of glue anywhere. So what I want to do now is I want to do something with the spine just to make it a little bit stiffer. And I thought this nice blue this blue paper would be great. I almost called it material. But it's just the right hue. I think goes really well with the book. And this is literally just a scrap piece of paper. So as I always say, keep your scraps. You never know when you're going to use them. So this is, again, I'm just gluing with the white glue down the strip of paper that's going to cover our spine and make it a little bit stiffer. I'll be overlapping on each side, and I like to get that fairly even on each side, but more importantly, I want to make sure that the spine cover is equal on both sides, so the same amount is covering the back as the front. No big deal if it's not, but it's just nicer looking if it's more symmetrical that way. And there's a little bit in the middle left, and we're going to be putting a piece of paper there too. So I have another scrap piece of paper in a similar color palette, and I'm going to just roughly cut and glue that down. And stiffening up your spine is a really great thing to do, because once you start stitching and using your book more and more, the spine is really the weak point of your book, particularly if you're going to be adding a lot of extra attachments or pages or glued items into your book, like pictures or any sort of memorabilia that you might want to glue into your book, like ticket stubs, all that kind of thing. Everything starts weighing in on the spine and you're stitching in the end. So I'm lining that up as best as I can and using my bone folder. It moved a little bit on me, which was a little bit annoying, but I get it back for the most part. It's one of the benefits with working with white glue. There are some drawbacks with working with white glue. Just the dry time is a lot longer with white glue than a glue stick, for example. But I feel that you're going to get a lot more lasting adhesion with the white glue over a glue stick. Glue sticks I use all the time, don't get me wrong. They're super handy, and you could easily do this whole project with a glue stick. So I'm carefully just folding the spine and the new spine, and it's starting to come up a little bit in a couple spots that I'm going to have to re-glue, but that's okay. That's not a big deal. It's looking really nice. I hope your book is looking just as nice. If you have any comments about this project or questions about this project, please put them in the comments below. If you have any book projects you'd like me to showcase on our channel, then let me know as well, and I would be happy to do that. I'm just really showing everyone a lot of really simple book projects to get you into bookbinding. I absolutely love making books of every shape, size, whatever. It's my favorite thing to do. And I hope that doing these small projects, you'll get some real joy out of it yourself, and you'll start creating books, and you'll start seeing books in everything. Like every cereal box you buy, you'll be calculating how many books you can get out of that. So I'm just playing around with the spine, and you can see here I just have to keep re-gluing. For some reason it's not sticking in that one spot, but that's okay. We get it in the end. That's looking great. The next thing I want to do is to cover up the little writing in the top right-hand corner. And I really like the look of this little tiny scrap again, because it has a bit of the blue color and some of the yellow color. And yeah, so I'm just gonna glue this down, and it also has some nice green on the other side. It was hard to decide what side to use, but I'm gonna use the more patterned side, and you'll see that I'm gonna wrap it around the edge of my book. And this is one of the techniques I use in probably every single book that I do. I just love wrapping paper around the edges of the book. It just brings a bit more depth to it and finishes off the edges really, really well. It really adds dimension. I really like it. So that's done. And there's another little piece on the front that I wanted to cover up as well. That glue, I'm not patient enough to let it dry at the bottom. So I found a little floral piece here that I think would look really nice with the theme of a tea party and a nice place setting. And I'm just trimming it a little bit. And again, I'm going to just use my white glue, and we're gonna put glue all over the back. And then you're gonna see that I'm gonna wrap this piece of paper around the front edge of the book as well, just again to give the book a little bit more dimension and finish on the edge pieces. So just taking the book, deciding what way I want the flowers. Yeah, I think I want them that way. Nope, that way. And there we go. And what I want to make sure when I'm putting this one down is I'm just trying to get the same spacing on each side so that it looks more like a uniform gap on each side between the cover and the roses and the roses and the spine. So there, that is looking really nice. And again, those two pieces of paper really add a lot of dimension and a little bit more interest to the front cover of the book. Next, I'm going to take my pages that I folded earlier and just fit them into the book and see what they look like. Before I do much further though, I'm just going to trim this piece, and I'm really just eyeballing it, and I'm going to use my ruler and my craft knife again. And this is really going to just make this page in line with the other pages. I always like having some sort of decorative piece of paper as a complete cover for the entry, basically, of my book. So that's it. And when I look at it, I'm thinking I probably could have fit 2 signatures in that book, not just one. But I'm going to go with 1 for now. And I'm going to add something to the front and cover to make it a little bit more decorative and fill out my book a little bit more, and you'll see that in a minute. So I'm grabbing my cutting mat because I'm poking the holes using my awl, and really we're going to be doing a very simple pamphlet stitch, which is just 3 holes. So I'm just grabbing my awl and I'm going to poke the 3 holes. I'm just roughly guessing where the center is. If you wanted to measure, you could measure, but I'm just guessing. I'm going to have 1 there, and I'm going to have 1 at the top of my book and 1 at the bottom. And if you notice, I'm only catching that middle smaller piece of paper with 1 hole, the center hole, and that's completely fine. As long as it's tacked in with at least 1 hole, it will be sturdy enough to stay in your book. So that's all we have to do with that. And now we're going to translate those holes onto the book cover. I just moved the smaller piece of paper away just so it wouldn't get in the way. And really I'm trying to go right into the middle of the spine area. So push that right through. Again, I totally could have used 2 signatures at least in this book. It would have been a lot thicker of a book. But for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to do the 1 signature, and this will be a really nice size for things like grocery lists, or just to have on my desk, just to jot down everyday notes. And the beauty of making a small book is that it will be filled up really fast, and then you can make another book. So in order to keep the pages together while I'm binding the book, I just use a binder clip. I'm measuring the wax linen thread. You can use any thread. I go 3 and cut it. That 3 was way more than enough. Probably just 2 lengths of the spine would be enough. And a needle is another thing that you needed that I forgot to mention at the beginning. I use a curved needle, but a straight needle will also do. Curved needles I just find are a lot easier going in and out of holes in the book spine, more when I have more holes closer together, but I like it for the pamphlet stitch as well. So we started the stitch on the inside of the book, going to the outside, leaving a nice tail. Here you'll see I struggle a little bit. I can't get my holes lined up. So a good tip is to get your awl or whatever you're using to make your holes and just push it through. Get all those pages lined up again. So from the outside, we're going back to the inside and through. This is a really nice simple stitch, and you could use this if I had multiple signatures, the same stitch multiple times. So don't go through the center hole, cross over the center and down the other side. And then we're going to finish the stitch by coming back up through the center. And that's all there is to it, to the pamphlet stitch. I'm going to take away my needle. And a good tip is to always make sure you have a piece of string or thread on each side of that vertical thread that's coming down. So when you tie your double knot, you're really securing your whole binding with that knot. And the vertical stitch will lie completely flat. It was a handy little tip I learned at a bookmaking workshop at my local library. And that's it. That's it stitched. The book is pretty much done. You could say it's done and walk away. But there's a couple of other things that I wanted to add to it. For one, I'm not really happy with this area right here. When I put the spine on, my bone folder creased the page, and I could wait for it to dry and see if it flattens out. But I'm going to use one of my favorite things again, and that's washi tape. And washi tape is great for hiding mistakes. It's great for a number of things, but it's great for hiding little mistakes. It's always, doesn't have to be, but it's usually colorful. Here's a nice stripe piece, and I'm just putting it right over the little area that I'm not happy with, and it just really transformed that area into something bright and nice. So I'm just flipping the pages, pretty exciting. The book's done, thinking about what I could put in it. Yeah, I love the colored pages. Now, the spine there kind of bugs me a bit, but it will flatten out when it dries. I'm thinking about putting something on the inside cover. And what I think I want to put in there is an envelope. So a little tuck point so I can put some other little pages into my book, but that's not stitched into my book. So I found this nice brown craft envelope, and I'm just marking where I want to cut the envelope. And I go to my trusty Fiskars paper cutter and just cut along the line that I marked. And in order to make it an easier envelope to access, I'm going to show you a little trick with a hole punch. So using a hole punch, this is a 1 inch, I think 1 inch hole punch, or 1.5 inches maybe. 1 inch is punch it halfway and you have a nice little opening in your envelope. And that looks really nice. So just gluing this envelope in the air rather than getting out my magazine, but I'm just putting a nice light coat of glue to secure the envelope. That's looking good. So you could do this with envelopes of pretty much any size, and you could put these in your book. You can fold envelopes and make a nice pocket as well I'll do some more with envelopes in an upcoming video. So the envelope is kind of boring, so I'm thinking that I want to use an accent piece, and I'm using the same paper that I used for the back inside cover. I thought I'd bring that theme to the front of the envelope. Same as the back. I'm going to stick it down right there after I trim it. So I'm just trimming that. I'm going to stick that down, and I'm also going to use a stamp image. And as you know, I like to use stamps in my journal and bookmaking. And I'm thinking that a nice bird stamp would look really great right at the top of my envelope. So that's what I'm going to use. Straight down in black ink, straight up. Lovely. And for the most part, unless I wanted to add anything else as far as accents to my book is done. And I'm really happy with that. I hope you're happy with that. I mean, it's quite the transformation from a box. Congratulations, you made a book from a box. Subscribe to our channel for more fun DIY projects and everything to do with crafts. Leave a like, and don't forget, hit the notification bell to be reminded of when we post our next video. If you have any questions or comments about this book, or if you have any questions and comments about the book size that you're using, post them below and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching.